Well, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot in the news from people not being able to even pay for their grocery bills, from the fact that we don't even know who will run on the Democratic side of things when it comes to our election, the fact of new wars starting just about weekly, new problems, new military issues. At the same time, inflation and interest, all that's not changing, seems to be getting worse. So what are 5 things that we should be doing this week? We need to start this week if you want to seem more independent, you want to have more sustainability, and you want to look at things to where you have a little bit more wisdom to say, you know what, I'm not as stressed as I once was. Let's talk about 5 things you should be doing and you should start this week. And I promise you, you do these things, your outlook for the next week and the next month and the coming year is going to be a whole lot better. Hey guys, welcome to The Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That's okay, but let us know what you think about the content of today's video. These are the things that we should be doing each and every week, and we should make sure that if we stick to these goals, if you stick to this, I promise you, your outlook, your wisdom, the fact that you're trying to navigate this crazy world, it will be a whole lot better. These are things that we practice on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and I think you should too. So let's jump into these things so we can make sure that we are on top of the game. Now remember, right now, finances are tough. Economy is falling to pieces. The fact that people are not able to pay their things that they need to pay, such as utilities, insurances, and groceries. I mean, the fact that we have wars, the fact that we have a president situation with the election, there's a lot that could go on. So I promise you, when you start these 5 things, you're going to see these things, yes, they impact you, yes, they stress you, but they will not overrule your life and stress you to a point where you don't feel like you're in control of them. Number 1 is we have to get on a budget and we have to handle our finances. We have to decide what wants and needs are. There's 2 studies that just came out. One study shows 40 to 50% of Americans will not take any trips for summer vacation, will not go anywhere because they can't afford to. I hate that. At the same time, that shows that if it's not a need, you may want to bypass it this year. Also, the fact that you're seeing about 70% of individuals, even if they're making 6 figures, say they cannot afford their monthly bills without going into credit card debt or having some kind of buy now pay later scenario for the month, even when they're in the $100,000 to $150,000 salary range. Now what that shows is we're not on budgets. It's not the money you make, it's the money you spend. So we go back to saying, okay, let's get back to a common sense approach to the way that we do our finances. So if we're wanting to make sure that we're balancing our own budget, you need to write how much you make, your net money, and you take either your giving or your tithe out, whatever it may be, your house note, and your utilities, and then all that's left needs to go towards your grocery. Then it would be debts. But once that money runs out, we have to realize it's run out. We can't just keep going into debt just because we want something new on Amazon or just because we want something at the grocery store. Part of that is you have to write out a grocery list. You can't just go into a store and just think that you can pick up what you need for the week. Meal plan it, budget plan it, and make sure you tell your money where it goes. You have to do these steps. If you do not get yourself on a budget and you start making sure your finances are intact, you will always be a servant and you will always be a slave to the lender and sometimes even to the government. You have to make sure you're doing this point. So let's get on a budget. Let's cut up the credit cards and let's make sure that we are balancing it up. For instance, what we do, we always say, okay, when we started this budgeting plan, I don't want my house note being 25 to 30% over what our net income is for our home. If it is, we don't need that house. We need a smaller house or we need a smaller rent. Same with vehicles. If we couldn't purchase a vehicle and have it paid for within a 6 to 12 month period when we were younger, we wouldn't buy it. If we can't pay it off in 6 to 12 months, we didn't need it. Now we're to a point where if we can't buy it outright, we don't buy it. But the point is, I can't afford a vehicle note along with all the other things that we're having to pay for in this crazy world that we live in. Thinking about credit cards, if you're using credit cards, you can say it's for the airline miles or the rebates, and if you're structured enough to handle that, that's okay. But most people are not. Cut the credit cards up, use debit cards, or of course use cash. I think when people use cash, they tend to save money because they see the cash leaving their wallet, so they tend to be a cheapskate, which is not a bad thing. Not going on vacation, as much as I want you to enjoy time, you know what you could do? You could do a staycation. You know, the thing about us, that's why we built a pool, that's why we do things around here, because our farm is so busy. But when we build things like playing basketball and have a basketball goal out net, having a basketball goal, or we fish together, or we swim together, or we just go out in the yard and play volleyball, that's a very economical way to do a staycation. Learn to spend time with your family, because that's the most important thing. We need to learn to budget and stick to the needs only, not the wants. If you're struggling right now, learn to find side hustles. We all have side hustles. Misty sells soap, she sells vegetables, she does all kinds of stuff to always bring in extra money to our family. That's what the key is, making sure you're on a budget. If you're not on a budget, start it today. Number 2, we have to get away from just letting TV be everything to fill our void. We need to learn to read a good book. I would challenge you to read the Bible, read a nonfiction book, read skill set books to where we can understand where we're at in history. We can understand how people faced adversity, how people faced trials and temptations, how people faced the mountains and the valleys. When we start reading nonfiction and we start reading autobiographies and we start reading skill sets and we start reading the Bible, we start finding wisdom, then it takes that spot where it fills the void with things that are good. Now, there's nothing wrong with podcasts. I love listening to podcasts. I don't listen to entertainment podcasts. I listen to financial podcasts, or I listen to current events podcasts. I listen to something that can give value to me to fill a void. If all we do is go turn on our TV and we look for entertainment, then we're filling a void with something that's not good for us and not conducive to making us do better. So when I listen to podcasts, you know why I listen to podcasts? Because I don't stop the activity I'm doing. If it's working out, if it's running, if it's working out in the farm, if it's moving cows, whatever it may be, that activity is still going while I'm listening to the podcast. Unlike that, TV, we tend to just sit down, we put our feet up, and there's nothing wrong with relaxing here and there. But did you know there's a new study that showed that the more we watch TV, the quicker we age? Think about your family. Think about all the people that devote their time to watching TV and spending all day watching TV, and how unhealthy they may be or lazy they may be versus someone who is active and trying to just say, okay, we're going to set time for TV. The way we do it is if we're saying, okay, tonight we're going to watch this movie. We set an objective for that night to watch that movie. We don't just want to turn it on and just leave it on and us just lay around and just watch TV all day. We say, let's learn how to read, let's learn how to get in a good book, let's learn how to listen to good podcasts, let's make sure that we are devoting our time to not just sitting in front of the TV. Let's make it productive. So number 2 really is time management, learning to be productive. If you say there's no time for it, then turn the TV off and learn to work out. If you say there's no time for it, turn the TV off and let's read a book. If you say there's no time for it, learn to play games with your kids. We played Uno with our kids last night. It's always fun. I want to devote time in a time management way. It's kind of like the budget. If I tell my money where it goes, then I know where it went. If I tell my time where it is, and some things we can't help, we work. I mean, I work 50 to 60 hours a week. Then I have a farm. Then I do a lot of other things like YouTube. But if we devote time to things that matter and productivity, then we're going to make for a better scenario each and every week that we go through. Number 3, I think is huge. You have to start a food pantry or prepper's pantry or learning how to grow the food. I challenge you to go and you start buying seed and learn how to process and get your own food. If you like to try to hunt, try to hunt. If you like to try to fish, try to fish. We have to start putting up food and we have to start learning how to provide our own food. Most of Gen Z could not tell you how to grow food. We think it's, well, I think they buy seed and I think they put it in the ground and I think they put a lot of fertilizer on it and it grows. That is a very educational level of a kindergartner way of thinking of growing food. You have to understand nutrients. You have to understand soil. You have to understand what seeds grow where, what seeds grow when, what season it is, how to harvest an animal and how to make sure that animal is giving to you and you're not wasting and you're providing everything that animal can provide for you. Sometimes it's all about making sure you know where your food comes from. Most people live in cities. Most people that live in a time where they didn't see their grandparents grow gardens and things like that, they've lost that skill set. So now I say, let's start a garden back. Let's learn how to hunt and fish again. Let's learn how to be productive in growing our food. When we see where our food comes from, we become more appreciative of it. We don't waste an ounce of food in our home. If we're not eating it, it's going to compost. If we're not eating certain foods, it's going to pigs. There's ways of non-waste that's giving back to our farm, our garden, to make sure that we're providing food for the next time. One thing about food sustainability, if you can't grow it, learn to buy it, learn to know where it comes from the farm. Go visit and tour a farm. Understand where your food comes from so that way you're more appreciative of it when you have it. And you need to start buying, you need to start putting up, you need to start learning how to preserve and start making this importance. I have tons of videos on it. Check the playlist. But I challenge you to go Survival Seeds. There's a link below. There's a whole seed vault where you can buy, and it's all different seasons of growing. That's phenomenal. You can grow indoors, in containers, in raised beds, outdoors, however's best for you and your family. Get to growing food. If you don't want to hunt or fish, okay, learn how to grow rabbits and chickens. You need to learn how to hunt, gather, and bring in food. That's key when it comes to the fact that sometimes, like, look at Australia. Have you seen the store shelves of, since all this stuff with H5N1 has hit down there, they're empty store shelves. Number 4, I would challenge you, even though we, especially with me with current events, I'm always looking at what's going on. I kind of mentioned earlier in 2, you have to devote time to your spouse, your family, your wife, your kids. If you're not dating your spouse, then you're missing out on the blessings of understanding your spouse deeper. If you're not loving your kids and playing games with them and not just watching TV with them, not just, taking them to school, not just doing the normal status quo, devote time to them. I want to devote time to fishing with my kids. I want to devote time to playing Uno, as we were just talking about. I want to devote time to, I have 2 kids that love to kind of work out and do aerobics. There's times that I've already worked out for the day and I'm tired, but I want to devote time to that because they like it. We just built this little activity pad where we're just playing basketball and playing, pickleball and all these little fun activity things that you can buy at Walmart, but go out there and play together. It's hot, it's humid, it's nasty out here. We've had a whole hard day, but when they want to go play, I'm going to go play because I want to devote time to them. I want them to know how much I love them. At the same time, my wife, I try to date my wife at least once a week. And I'm not talking about, we see each other and we sit around the table all the time. But I try to devote either just me and her going out to eat, to a little dinner, a little lunch, very simple meal. We're not talking about spending a lot of money here. Or we just say, look, we're going to meet at the house and the kids, I know they've ate, but let's just sit at the table, let's eat a sandwich together. Literally, Friday, this was just a few days ago, we literally picked some tomato, we picked some cucumber, we had some of our ham, and some of our cheese that we made. And we literally sat there and ate just like a finger food meal together. You're spending that one-on-one time together. And when we're in the stress of the world and you have a partner that's going through it with you, it's a game changer. So make sure that you're devoting time to your spouse, not stress, not worry, but understanding them. At the same time, make sure your kids see that, because your kids need to know the value of companionship and marriage, and make sure they understand the fact of love. You need to love your kids, spend time with them, devote time to family. Sit around the dinner table, turn the TV off, and learn to eat meals together. It's a game changer for your family. And number 5, I want you to take what we talked about with reading and understanding things and trying to devote more time to things. And I want you to, number 5, I want you to learn a skill, and I want you to hone in on it. If it's martial arts, hone in on it. If it's growing a garden, hone in on it. If it is literally tracking, hone in on it. If it is literally learning how to do mechanics and building and carpentry, whatever it may be, pipe work, welding, hone in on it. Having a skill, you are taking it to the next level to where you're always an asset to yourself and to your family. In a survival situation, in a scenario where the crap hits the fan, if you have a skill set, then you're going to bring value to a community. Bringing value to a community helps. This is one thing we talk about in prepper communities, and we talk about in making sure that we are prepared for anything that comes our way. If I know how to handle animals, or I know how to butcher animals, or if I know how to harvest animals, or if I know how to work on a piece of equipment, or work on a tractor, or understand the mechanics, or understand how to build a shelter, those things are key. Now think about it in the real world. Say nothing ever happens, you don't need for prepping. Think how nice it would be if you knew how to build, if you knew how to do pipe work, if you knew how to weld. Those are skills that those blue-collar workers are making hundreds of dollars an hour because no one knows how to have skills anymore. Think about all the people who used to mechanic. There used to be mechanics everywhere. Now there's hardly anybody who can work on a vehicle. And I know there's a lot of computerized vehicles and you don't have shade tree mechanics, but there's still things like tractors. There's still things like older cars. I buy a lot of older cars. The purpose is so we can learn to work on them. So we need people to have skills. So I want you to challenge yourself this week. You learn how to start building a skill set for something. It may be as simple as being a rabbit grower. It may be as simple as something as being an egg producer. But it may be something as detailed as learning how to build, learning how to construct a home, learning how to process and butcher and harvest an animal, learning how to cure meats. How valuable is that with no energy, no grid? I've watched people just learn how to just truly cure meats, and it's a mind-blowing situation. I'm a smoker out there, and I've done okay on it, but I'm trying to hone in that skill even better. It may be self-defense. It may be understanding how to defend your home. Learn to do something that can provide you a skill set, because a skill set could be independence for you and safety for your family, and also providing worth, money, assets, and value. And that's key. All right, guys, that's the 5 for the day. I wanted to kind of break up the news cycle and talk about just how to make our lives better and how we become better and be more sustainable and independent, especially in a trying time like we're in. There's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of problems. Well, if we learn how to budget, we learn to love our family, we learn to build skills, we learn to take time management importance, and we learn to try to do these things in a way that represents maybe a passion for Christ and a love for our spouse, a love for our children, then we're doing phenomenal things. And it's a game changer, and it will help us navigate this crazy world. I don't want to have to worry about something. I want to make sure I'm growing enough food. I want to make sure I'm taking care of my family. When I'm doing those things, even though the world is stressing and chaotic, it makes the mountains and valleys be able to easily be attainable and me just push through. Guys, let me know your thoughts on today's video. Do you like these kind of videos? I want you to do these things now, because I promise you it may impact you and your family, and it'll change your family tree. I love what Dave Ramsey says, it'll change your family tree. I want to change my family tree, not to the point where I don't want to forget who I was, but I want to learn from who I was to be better and make sure my kids understand that too. Guys, thank you for watching. God bless.